The most dramatic thing and what we have now happened in February 8, 2006. I happen to still retain that date in my head. And people after that the word sort of started spreading, and people are aware now of what they can do and are availing themselves of it, because all it takes is seeing one person blow through their assets, say in a year and a half in a nursing home, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't let that happen. Must be great on a first date.
Dude, I don't know. I could be great on a first date. It's just, it's been so long. I've been married like over a decade. I've been with my wife for 13 or 14 years. I don't even know how to talk to women anymore. I find
but if you have the gift of gab,
but it's still intimidating. It's like more nervous energy than it is anything. How long have you been an attorney for?
30 years.
Oh, wow. And where'd you go to law school?
UConn.
Oh, nice. Right around the block.
Yeah.
Big around the block.
Yeah.
So you're a UConn Husky.
Yep. Although the law school is in West Hartford, so I've never been to stores, which I don't think I'm missing much.
And then where did you grow up?
Upstate near Buffalo, suburb of Buffalo.
Wow. How'd you find your way downstate? The lower 48?
A very circuitous route. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Love.
Yes.
Makes you do funny things.
That's usually how people end up moving around.
And then you have been at your law firm for about how long?
26 or 7 years.
And what made you want to be an attorney, let alone go into like the elder care route?
I had a clerkship after law school, and elder law wasn't even a field yet. That's how long ago it was, although despite my youthful appearance. So I was getting Medicaid regulatory cases, and I loved it because people were just trying to protect assets, and there was no rules or laws as to whether you could or couldn't. So I was...
Wild West days, huh?
Yeah, total Wild West. I was writing decisions for the judges and using other areas of the law to create new law. And so I started asking my boss at the time I was like, give me all the Medicaid cases. You know, I really loved it. And that's how I started. And after it was a 1-year clerkship, as most are, and there were 2 firms in the city practicing elder law, and I went with one of them and just soaked it up, learned everything I could learn. I
find it absolutely insane. I mean, I'm sure you do too, and people always say that we're biased to it, but like it's insane to me that nobody decides to plan ahead for anything. I mean, like, it seems like nobody ever needs us until they need us.
Right.
And nobody thinks to, hey, let me just, set this up ahead of time. And it's like, I can't stress the importance enough, especially on your end. My end is end game. It's literally the end. And, there's plenty to do with that, but protecting assets and, guardianships and power of attorney for like spouses and everything, it's so important. And people don't think to do it ever, and it blows my mind. Even now, like we did ours years ago, and matter of fact, we're probably due for like a touch-up or a refresher because things have changed. Like when we first got married, I had this huge asset in the business, and I had sought advice from an attorney, and we did, like, I say it's a prenup like I'm some billionaire. I'm not. Mm-hmm. It was a prenup. It was more in the fact of if we weren't able to have kids and there was a divorce, or if we weren't able to have kids and I died, like the business would go back to my family and would be compensated, and she would be compensated that way. But we had kids, 3 kids later, and so all that goes away now, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. And I think I say blessed, but probably burdened some people too with the, God forbid something happens to me or my wife, who gets the kids and all that. But I mean, do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, because circumstances change, life circumstances change, and people need to come back in and review their documents. But I think what happens is either people are too busy and they think about it, but they don't take the time to take action.
Right.
Or they're kind of superstitious and they think if I do something, I'm, putting a pox on, I'm going to bring about
I get a lot
something
of that
terrible.
The Italian people. Yeah,
I've heard that from
like
a lot of people.
The most superstitious, hands down.
Yep.
It's like, if I make prearrangements for my funeral, I'm going to die.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's ridiculous.
But guess what? You're going to die.
Yeah.
Because there's only a couple things that are certain. Death and taxes, right?
Death and taxes, that's it.
You can't avoid it. You may as well plan for it. And some other people just think it's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to go to a nursing home, so why should I plan?
Yeah, just live
I'm
forever,
never going to
it'll
be
fine.
incapacitated. Why should I plan and do a power of attorney? Which is just crazy. But it's kind of part of the human condition.
Yeah.
But I will say on the elder law side, when I first started out, nobody was planning ahead. Everything was the crisis planning where you were only saving half the assets. Nobody, because there was no education about it.
So when did all that come into effect? Like, making trusts and doing that and being able to protect all the assets.
It came into the law changed in increments and chunks over time. So the most dramatic thing and what we have now happened in February 8, 2006. I happen to still retain that date in my head. But so that's kind of the way it is now, and what we all know is the structure of what we can do. And people after that the word sort of started spreading, and people are aware now of what they can do and are availing themselves of it, because all it takes is seeing one person blow through their assets, say in a year and a half in a nursing home, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't let that happen.
I don't think people really understand how expensive the nursing homes are, and like not even that it's end of life care, even if it's just like an assisted living.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money is.
It's astronomical. People can't get their heads
You'll
around it.
You'll blow through $1 million in a short amount of time.
Yeah, in a few years.
It's and that's not even like a high end facility. Just
no,
like
that's
a
just
middle
regular,
of the road.
Yeah.
I know like what's the big one? There's one in Babylon. There's one in Jericho.
Bristol.
The Bristol. That Bristol and Jericho was insane.
Yeah.
It's like going into a Four Seasons.
Yeah.
For the elderly, and it's definitely, I feel like that has made a big leap from, we're going to put you in a nursing home, Mom, if you don't behave when you get older, to the assisted livings are like, it's literally like its own community. It's like, they do things. So, like it's still elder care, but it's fancier. It's not, you're not stuck in a nursing home.
No, it's like college.
Yes.
But in your older years, because you're with a community of people your same age, same interests typically, and everyone's got activities to do. I think it looks great. The places are beautiful.
I think
the
so,
care
too.
is good. The people are nice. You want to look around at various places and see who you mesh with, because it's just like looking at colleges. Who am I going to get along with? Who's going to be my roommate? All that kind of stuff.
I did a tour with Julie Wexler, is that her name?
Sure, yeah.
Very nice lady.
Yeah.
Took me on a tour in the one in Babylon, which is down by my funeral home. And I was pleasantly surprised about that one, too. They do have the memory care section, which is like, it's rough. It's nice. It's well kept. They have plenty of staff, but like memory care is very like, it's rough on the mind. And I don't know how like the caretakers just deal with that day in and day out. I wonder if like statistically you see like a high level of like alcoholism in that field. So like in my field too, there's a high level of alcoholism and substance abuse, because it just is what it is. You're looking death in the face every single day.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess that could be challenging to some. I grew up in it, so it's like it's first nature to me. But when people have memory care issues, because if I'm not mistaken, is big of a lawyer you are. I think you won the Super Lawyer Award recently, right? You're even more of a philanthropist, I see, because I'm at a ton of networking events and philanthropists, like not-for-profits, I should say, and you're at every single one of them. So, it's very impressive, and I don't know that the community realizes how much you actually do for all these places. And it's a breath of fresh air to see people giving back so much.
Thanks. That's what keeps me going. That's my passion project.
So you're very big with Liad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just was with Tori today. Wonderful woman.
Yeah, she's great. I love Liad's Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center. It is an amazing organization.
Yeah, they do a lot.
I was chair of the board for many years. I've been involved with them for about 20 years. It's great. It's grassroots, as you probably know. Yep. All the money is raised on Long Island. The money stays on Long Island. Hands-on care for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. It's just an amazing organization.
Do you do anything with, I know I see your name literally everywhere at every event, but is there anything like near and dear to your heart?
With Liad?
Just in general.
In general?
Yeah, like I obviously Liad is probably the number one for you because let's see, like we have their casino night coming up. I took a big sponsorship for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. November 13th.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah,
even if you just take the donating part out of it, I had a blast the last time I went.
It's a fun event.
It's you get to go and gamble away all that fake money, and it all goes to a good cause.
Yeah.
So what's better than that?
Yeah.
So what do you like to do for fun? How do you escape the stresses of being an attorney in that high stress environment? Because like you run a big firm in reality, so there's a lot of responsibility.
Yep.
What do you like to do for fun?
Hang out with my dogs.
What kind of dogs you got?
I have a couple of mutts. They're rescues, German Shepherd mix and a Black Lab mix. And I have a relatively new puppy that kind of inherited through my boyfriend whose mom got ill. So she's a multi-poo. So, I come home at the end of a day, which could be, 8, 9, 10 at night.
Oh, wow.
And they just take all the stress away. They're they're better than my kids. I hope they don't listen to this, but they know it.
I have one rescue. He's a Tosa Mastiff. He's a Japanese Mastiff. And then I have a German Shepherd that's like a purebred. She's a giant dog. She's 120 pounds in shape, German Shepherd. She is pretty much a golden retriever. She looks terrifying, but she'll be like, if you broke into my house, she'd be like, what's up, dude? Let me show you where he keeps the money. There is none left, but, my other guy is from the dog meat markets of South Korea.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was like scrolling on Facebook, just like mindless, and this just meatball face popped up. And they were, I forget the name of the organization, but they're in like Port Jeff, like, I could look it up, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Guardians of Rescue. And I guess I had, liked their Facebook page at one point, and this just mush face of a dog is on my screen. And I'm like, babe, let's just go look. Knowing, well, for sure, I was coming home with this dog. But they didn't actually let me go home with the dog because he was a rescue and he comes from like a cruel background. They made us bring, at the time I had a husky, and they made us bring the husky to meet the dog. Now this dog, my dog at the time, Sasha, was awesome, kind with everybody, like never worried about a thing. And when they met, they didn't get along at all. So they kind of wiped me off the list. And I was like, I wouldn't say I was heartbroken, but I was upset about it. And then my wife went behind my back and told them that I was like devastated. And then all of a sudden they called us back and they were like, well, look, come take the dog and take the dog home with you. And if things don't work out, just bring him back. We took him home, and it was a little bit of an adjustment. It took like a day or two, but then all of a sudden they were drinking out of the same bowl, and like the rest is history. When I say history, this dog was like 4 months old, required a double hip replacement, $7,500 each side, paid for that, got the pet insurance after that, like a dope. I should have got it before that. He walks on like his tippy toes, like he's in high heels, because he was in a cage for like the first 4 months of his life. And he's got polydactylism, which he's got an extra digit on his back paws, which doesn't affect anything, but he walks on his tippy toes all the time. So it like kind of grinds down like the nail and the toes. So he's got all sorts of leg problems. But, the alternative was we were going to eat him.
Yeah.
He's a 170-pound Mastiff. He is literally a horse. If he walked in this room, his back is probably like up to here on all fours. And his head is like literally a horse head.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like the best dog ever. But, he's getting up there. And that's the worst part about having dogs is the end of it. Yeah. It's like literally, I don't think I ever cried so much in my life since I had to put the 2 dogs down. It really is the pets.
Yeah. It's that unconditional love.
Yeah.
And they're just so happy to see you.
Every day you come home and they're just...
Yep.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 23 and 21.
Any of them coming into law with you, or?
Not with me, but my son is in law school.
Oh, nice. Where's he go?
He is at LMU in Tennessee, Knoxville.
Oh, nice. It's good for him. Probably.
Yep. And my daughter's pre-med, so she's totally out of the picture.
Oh, wow. That's great, pre-med. Yeah. What does he want to do? Does he want to go for elder care, or you think? Or
no, he wants to be a trial attorney.
Oh, one of my good friends is a trial attorney.
Yeah, either that or a philosophy professor.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see what happens.
Those are drastically different career paths.
We'll see what happens.
And your daughter is going for pre-med. What kind of medicine she want to practice?
She wants OBGYN is what she's thinking.
Oh, it's a interesting field too, because there's a lot of ups and downs with that.
Yeah.
A lot of happy times, a lot of sad times.
Yeah, exactly.
And, a lot of happy times, but those sad times definitely outweigh the other way.
Yeah.
It's even too with us with the funerals, man. We get the kids in. It just gives me so much anxiety just knowing that, like, we get those phone calls, and we do all those types of funerals for free. It's like business we don't want, but we do them. I speak out of both sides of my mouth, because in reality, it's like I want to do the work because I know I'm going to do a better job than just some guy at like a corporate funeral home that's like you're just another number there. But at the same time, it's like it gives me anxiety. I have kids. I like transfer my emotions onto that.
Yeah,
it's very challenging, I guess you would say. And
it's hard not to,
home. You take it home with you.
Yeah, you're a human being. How can you not?
Yeah.
So
you work till 10, 11 o'clock at night? Some nights?
Yeah. Between networking and the work, and, there's always so much to do. Are
you still meeting with clients, or have you kind of like passing
I don't meet with clients because I'm not anybody's day-to-day attorney.
So what does your day-to-day workload look like? What are you doing?
Managing the firm, managing the direction we're going, managing the finances, the strategy, all that kind of stuff.
And you're I noticed when I was actually at your firm recently, I noticed you have a lot of women. Are you predominantly woman-owned? No, woman-owned, yes, but like women attorneys?
Not predominantly. We have a lot of men. I think it feels like we have a lot of women because we have maybe more women than most law firms, but maybe we're 60-40.
What do you look for in like a candidate, somebody that you'd like to hire? Like,
we look for skill set, obviously, smarts, go-get-em attitude, compassion is really important.
You got to be client-centric too, right? Because you're dealing with,
that's everything.
With people that it's like, I'm sure you've run into this because I've run into it too. It's like they have some stuff, some assets, and it's like they don't want to tell you about it.
But they have to.
Otherwise you can't protect them properly.
Absolutely.
Do you run into a lot of pain in the butt clients?
Sometimes, yeah. And I liken it to being like a criminal attorney. If you don't tell me everything I need to know, we're going to get killed in court. I can't represent you if you don't tell me where the bodies are. You know, it's kind of like that. And you're doing yourself a disservice. So you've got to tell me everything. You've got to tell me about other relationships, other marriages, and things like that. I have had people in the conference room with the current wife who didn't know about other marriages, other children, and they've been married now maybe 20, 30 years, whatever it was.
Wow.
And this person didn't want to disclose that.
Surprise.
I had to know that. How could I protect this couple?
Shame on that person, though. Like, how do you not share that information?
It happens, you know.
That's wild.
But
I had a wild funeral. Was that the guy died not during 9/11, but he died of 9/11 related illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to talk about awkward. Who I thought was his wife came in, made the arrangements, and planned everything, paid for everything, and then left, shook hands, thank you so much, no problem. The wake was on I forget, say it's a Tuesday, 2 to 4, 7 to 9, and then like an hour later, his actual wife called me, and they knew about each other.
Oh.
And one sat on one side of the room in the front row, and the other one sat on the other side of the room in the front row. And I gotta say, there was no drama, but it was like it might have been me, but it felt like there was a palpable tension in the room.
It might have been you.
Understandable though too. I'm just, how do you live that type of life where you don't, like you said, you have clients that have whole families that they don't tell you about?
Yeah. See, for you, that could be like an awkward whatever. For me, it's a legal disaster. There's all kinds of implications.
How does something like that work? If you have somebody married, like in, say, they have a family here in New York and a family here in California, like, and then they have assets, but they're both pooled technically, right? So, like, do you split that?
Well, it depends. If they're, let's say they're still legally married to that other person, and then they're just calling the new person their wife, if they don't have proper documentation and whatnot, that person that is technically the wife could have inheritance rights. If they have biological children, they're going to be on notice when the will is admitted to probate if there's a will. So they're going to have a right, to maybe contest the will and say, I was left out, he didn't acknowledge me, things like that. So it comes with a whole host of problems. Whereas if I know about those people, we might put all assets in a trust and avoid probating a will for the purpose of avoiding those kinds of will contests and things like that. So I might have a completely different strategy if I know that information.
What's going through your head
when that stuff happens?
I would just be like, are you kidding me?
I have to have a poker face.
That's incredible.
Which has gotten better over the years, but sometimes.
Do you ever just break down and go, dude, what were you thinking?
No, I can't do that.
Oh,
that's what I say when I go home. That's what I tell the dogs.
Yeah, that dogs know where all the bodies are buried.
You wouldn't believe what happened today.
Yeah. That's insane. So, like, when any like super memorable clients, they obviously you can't reveal any names, but like anything super crazy besides multiple families?
Multiple families. I remember one person held himself out as someone's son and was not actually the son. And this person was a client with us for years and years and years and years, and we didn't find out. We found out by accident. I can't even remember how. And it just threw all of us for a loop. We were like, wait a second.
What would happen if they pass without a will? And let's say they have, middle-class people, nothing crazy, 401k and stuff like that. What happens to that money? Let's say there's the next of kin would be like multiple children. Say the wife is deceased already. And
okay.
So what happens? Does that go to like a probate?
So what happens is it goes by the laws of intestacy. So first you look for a spouse. If there's no spouse, then you look for children, and it would be divided equally among children. Whoever, whatever surviving children there are. If there's no children, then it goes to parents. If there's any living parents, if there's not living parents, then it goes to siblings of the decedent. So basically, if you don't have a will, the state writes a will for you, and that may not be what you wanted necessarily.
Right. So it pays to get what you put down.
Yeah.
Exactly. What you want on paper. Now, is it as expensive as people think it is? How does it is like a sliding scale? The more you have, the more it is.
No, most people don't charge that way. It depends on what your needs are. So if you're doing a will with trusts, if you need trust for minors, if you need a special needs trust, a lot of times what's happening now is that people are putting their assets in trust for children, often for lifetime, because what's happening with kids, and by kids you could be talking about 35, 40, 45 years old or even longer. The adult kids have a lot of their own issues. Maybe they have gambling problems, potential divorces.
I've had it in my family too. It's kind of how I ended up where I am. Other people's misfortunes put me first in line. I had my grandparents who are now deceased. My funeral home is a 101-year-old family owned and operated. Same family the entire time, but I had people in front of me. Mm-hmm. I had an uncle who had a gambling problem, and that turned into an addiction and a gambling problem. And then he kind of like worked this. He had an OTB account hooked up, like EFT, to the funeral home checking account. And my grandfather was like in his 90s, not thinking his son was going to be literally stealing from him.
Right.
And then what was funny is it was when he won, which wasn't that often, they never put any of the money back. Oh. But when he lost, it didn't cost him anything. It was like $2 on him to death. And then one thing led to another, and there was like, this whole big battle. But even after they died, and they had their wills set up, which I thought was what they did was the right thing, but they were still contested. So can you, you could just, that's a thing, you can just, if you get a lawyer who's willing to take the case, you can contest it.
Any will can be contested. Will you prevail? That depends.
And he got like literally, I think, less than $10,000. And it was like, you have to go away for good. Yeah,
that can happen. But that's also, that brings up a point that people think that they can, save a couple of bucks and do a will online, like what's the thing I'm thinking of?
I know
those online programs and whatever. That is the worst thing you should do, because a will is like a parachute. You only use it once, and you want to make sure it's going to work when you do use it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't want to have these kind of problems. That's really penny wise and pound foolish. So there's super strict requirements in New York State for a valid will. And there's nothing online that is going to comply with that.
Right. How can they know the sensitive ins and outs of somebody's finances by just somebody going like this on a computer?
Or what they need, or
out.
even the ceremonial requirements of a legally valid will and all that kind of stuff. So there's
Right.
and it's absolutely not one size fits all. Everybody's will is different. Everybody's trust is different. It's very.
How do you deal with your difficult clients? Because like on my end of it, it's like they're literally sometimes like the Hatfields and the McCoys. I mean, like they'll be in my arrangements office. One's over here, one's over there, and we don't. Mom wanted a closed casket. We wanted to see mom, and it's like I get stuck in this like Dr. Phil role of like, well, they have equal rights. I've gone as far as having 2 separate funerals for the same person.
Really?
I don't want to be involved, and it's easier for me to open my doors and turn the lights on and stick somebody at the front door for 2 hours here and 2 hours there. Mm-hmm. But sometimes some people are just so arrogant and just so like steadfast in a negative way. Like recently I had this guy, and shame on him. They came in, they seemed fine. The brother was paying for the funeral. And then all of a sudden the brother was like, well, I'm only paying for half. But wanted everything. Just like make it like mean too. Like making demands to me. And it's like, I just, in my head, I'm like, all right, you're in business. Sometimes you got to eat a little crow. So I just, okay, sir, no problem. Then she came up with the money. And then I had to tell him, well, now she gets a say. It's not just what you want anymore. You ruined it for yourself. I find that very, like, they put us in very difficult situations. Like this guy, again, he wanted the casket closed. I pat myself on the back. We did a very good job with we call it the layouts, which is the embalming, the hair, and the makeup. And the rest of the family was thrilled. So like half the family was like in agreement with this guy, half the family was in agreement with her. And we wound up doing 2 separate funerals. Literally, I was like, just let's close it. You come back later and we'll open it and you can have some time. And they wound up having a fist fight in my lobby.
Oh my gosh.
They come running in. You gotta help. I run out to the lobby to help, and they're like, do something. I'm like, you want me to call 911? She's like, no. I go, then let them beat the shit out of each other. And then I just separated them at the end, and I was like, that was your one mistake. I was like, if you do it again, you're out of here. I'll call the cops, and you can't come back.
Yeah.
And everything seemed good. The guy, the brother-in-law that I had a fight with leaves. The actual son of the deceased stays. The rest of the funeral went fairly well in comparison. It's almost like they got it out of their system. And then all of a sudden I'm getting a notice from a lawyer about I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I told the lawyer, and I said, hey man, just come, I'll play the tape. And he's like, oh, what do you mean tape? I go, oh, there's cameras everywhere. And he goes, oh, there is? I go, yeah, they even got sound too. And he's like, oh, all right, never mind. And I never heard anything else about it. I still have their mother's ashes because he won't come in and just sign a simple piece of paper, like just, agreeing to separate the mother's ashes.
Oh my God.
So now I told this poor woman who's been trying to do the right thing by her mother the whole time, I need a judge to give me an order to separate the ashes. I'm very sorry. And I'll just hold on to them. They're in a safe spot, but some people just abhorrently crazy.
Yeah. But what that really is grief and anger from childhood or whatever.
I think it's a little guilt mixed in there too.
Yeah, and then it gets directed at you, where it's supposed to be directed amongst themselves or whatever. And that happens to us sometimes because we're sort of a convenient repository, if you will, of the family dynamics, and everybody's in, once they hit the anger phase of grief, we're the convenient receptacle for it. And sometimes it's really hard, but I personally will have to step back and say, this is not about us. This is not directed at us. It is directed at us right now, but
it's like
it's just them working it out, and we just kind of got to take it. We just have to take it, and even as hard as that is, you have to realize where it's coming from. But sometimes it's really hard not to take it personally, and you get these people saying, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and
I had a guy once
I'm going to sue you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that," and it's just like, what is going on? But then you're like, okay, right, they're in the anger phase of grief. Everyone's going to get through
Yeah.
this. We have a job to do. They're
I had a
just,
guy,
this is where they are,
laugh.
you know?
He threatened, this was over an obituary. They had changed this woman's obituary, like, it had to be 5 or 6 times. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, guys, I'm like, is this it? Because, you know, like, I don't want to have to change it again. And he was like, just an outlash. And he apologized, to be fair. And he was like, how about I put you in the obituary? And I started laughing because I didn't know how to handle it. He was an older man. It was, you know, it was like a funny line. And he was just like, I'm sorry, I'm going through a lot. Like you said. Yeah. And it's like, listen, I understand. I also, it means nothing to me in reality. Like, you know, but the uncontrollable emotions of end-of-life planning and then the actual funeral is you know, something that's very hard to cope with. And I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are good at it. Right. Like you said, short memory, right? We're here to do a job. Let's get the job done and just don't take it personal.
Right. And they're there at their worst. They're seeing you at their worst.
Yeah.
So,
do you get
that's
a lot
where
of those
we do,
split
yeah.
families?
And that's where, you know, the compassion has to come in. And to your point about, you know, what do I look for when I hire people? I'm looking for people who can really be empathetic and have those moments where they're like, okay, you're not your best self. You're sitting here with me and I'm working with you and I recognize you're not your best self and I'm not going to hold it against you.
I think that's unfair, though, to do to you is to be in there, like, not being their best self. For you, it's like you're an advocate for the family in reality. I mean, so am I.
So are you, yeah, of
but
course.
Like, you know,
you're doing your best job and you're giving them everything you got and you want to help them and do the best you can for them. And then sometimes you're getting kicked like a dog.
Right.
It sucks.
And I can take it.
Yeah.
I got broad shoulders.
Yeah,
I can
so
shoulder
do I,
them.
of
But
course.
like, you know, for you, you could. In my end of it is the pre-planning. In your end of it, it's like, to me, I've told all my friends multiple times, especially with the ones that have kids, I go, you have assets to protect. You could, you know, you get your ticket punched any day. You'll be sitting at a red light and lights out forever. Yeah. And if you don't have your affairs in order, it could be a real problem. Yeah. So like, somebody like, I'm just turned 40. I have 3 kids. My friends are all around the same age and they have children. What's an important thing to do for them?
Wills, naming guardians of your young kids.
Right.
So in your age group, that's what brings people in. But that may be what stops you from signing your documents because you and your spouse may disagree over who should be that guardian of the kids.
So what's the solution to that? Coming to an agreement?
Yeah.
Between the two of them?
Yep. Between the
And that's only that's in the event of both people perish.
Yep.
Which is not as likely, right?
Depends, you know. Couples travel together, something could happen, but you know, you have to plan for that. And then you need a backup too, because what happens if you always need backups for everything. You name an executor, you need a successor executor, you name a trustee, and then a successor trustee. So in small families, that can be really difficult, or in very large families, that can be difficult. You know, picking out those fiduciaries.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine that you have to let those people know that you pick?
No, not necessarily. It depends, because again, every family's different. So ideally, you would have the conversation with them saying, I've chosen you, here's what your role would be. You know, you're either first up or you're the contingent person, but here's what your responsibilities would be. But in some families, they don't necessarily want that person to know. If you're naming up someone a power of attorney, they have to know, and they even sign your power of attorney now. That law changed in 2009.
We have our little version of power of attorney. It's the right to control the disposition of remains. Is that something that needs to be done by an attorney, or is that something that somebody can do? I actually just had a guy, he's obviously he's elderly, but like he's not in the greatest health. He came in, made arrangements with me, has a sister he doesn't talk to in Tennessee, oddly enough, and a neighbor. He's like, my neighbor's going to carry everything out for me.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey, that's all well and good. I go, but in reality, like, she can supersede everything that you want for the neighbor. And I printed one out for him, and I said, you know, I told him to take it to an attorney, but I was reading it. It seems like a fairly simple form, and a lot of people don't know about that.
I know they don't. There's no real education on that.
No, I try to do my best to educate people on, like, you know, the options that they have, because there is a lot of family strife. We deal with it literally all the time. Yeah. And you can ahead of time say, hey, I want whoever this is to carry out my wishes. My wishes were pre-planned with Vin over at Noche. Yeah. And How would something like that work? Do they need to have that filled out by you, or can it just be a notary?
They can do that themselves with a notary.
It seemed like a fairly simple form in reality.
Yeah, and they can make it as straightforward or as complicated as they want, or as complicated as specific is what I really mean by that. And they can do it with us. We offer that with our other advanced directives, the healthcare proxy, living will and power of attorney, and disposition of remains. Or they could do that themselves as part of pre-planning. But, people need to think about this. I will share my experience. I was guardian for a woman who lived in a nursing home. The court appointed me her guardian. She had dementia and no family members whatsoever. And I did a pre-plan. And when she passed away, I think I was her guardian for 5 or 7 years or something. I had pre-written her obituary. I had chosen what she would be buried in.
Right.
I had all of that stuff done. And when she passed away, it was a seamless process. And I was so glad that I didn't, and I had grown actually very close with her. I used to bring my kids with me when I visited her.
Nice.
So we were all, part of the game. And it was just so great to not have to deal with the minutia at the time and just have the church service and have the burial and not have to think about any of and even just something so simple as the obituary being already written and everything and having listed out all of her predeceased family members, and I didn't have to do the research at that time, and I could just kind of properly grieve. It was so...
Now you said that's a guardianship?
Yeah.
Now, is that something there's no living relatives that...
There were no relatives. I was it. And I wasn't related to her. But like I said, I grew close with her.
Anybody could be appointed a guardian, or does it have to be the attorney?
It's typically an attorney.